So roast me and dad jokes. Which one came first?
I believe, I believe roast me came first, but roast me was a long burn. You know, it didn't really blow up until the third season. And then dad jokes was just right out the gate. You know, the first episode was on the news. So like,
Damn, that's
it was
crazy.
very quick. So dad jokes, I feel like it seems like it was out longer because it was popping for longer. But roast me was a minute ago back. You know, a lot of people don't know the don't remember the first season because it wasn't great, but it was where I got my bearings. It was like my first big production. But it looked like we were in hell. I don't know what was up with the set. It literally looked like we were in hell. It was like a rotating spit. That one did okay, but I didn't get the rhythm until the marketing, which is an interesting story. The way I marketed it ended up being the actual format that I used. People liked how I market it better than the actual finished product. So
Wow.
yeah, it was
Explain that.
okay. So when roast me started, um, basically roasting had bubbled up as a culture within the office. You know, we had Teddy Ray and Doughboy roasting each other. We had Tony Hinchcliffe coming through and roasting people. To hear more added, he's from St. Louis. He was roasting people. We had a couple shows called like Kids, White People Roast for the First Time, Old People Roast for the First Time, stuff like that. And roasting became like this is kind of tight. So the CEO knew that we needed a roasting show, and unrelated, he wanted a game show. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna create a roasting game show, and I wrote it like a game show, and it's really tough to create a game because you make it and you're like, this is cool, and then you play it and you find out all the stuff that's wrong with it.
Right.
You know, like all the pieces don't fit together. So we kind of got it down. We did a couple of rehearsals, but it was very like formulaic. You know what I mean? It was very like, this was how you said you had a joke, and then the audience, the host would call on you, and you would attack the person. The dude who was on the hot seat was on a rotating spit. Shout out to Sydney Kim. That was a suggestion from him. But yeah, it was very like, you roast, huh? You roast.
Right.
No, and there was a whole bunch of other things. I rented this studio out for 3 days straight, and it was a cold year, but for some reason, those 3 days were the hottest days of the year. It was like upper 90s. And the studio, their AC was broken. So the first day, I was in there with the set designers making the set, sweaty mess. Second day, setting the cameras with the production team. Third day was the shoot day, and I promised all def I could shoot 9 episodes to make the budget make sense. So wow. It's this hot, sweaty, nasty place. The comedians are hot. You could see them. If you watch the first season, you see Teddy sweating like a dog. And like
I think Teddy sweats without the AC.
That is true. No, he sweated all the time. Right. It was like legitimately hot. But I was nervous. I was like I wasn't letting the crew laugh. I was like, shh, you know what I mean? I was a tyrant. I didn't know how to run a set. I was doing a million things at once. And I was just like forcing the funny. I was like, come on, like let's go until we get a big laugh. It was just like, it was very, very forced. But then we shot those, and I did all the heavy lifting to save money. I rented the cameras, the lights, all that, the spit. So I remember loading all that in the truck by myself and just going home and weeping. I wept. I never wept until I shot Roast Me, because I was like, I put everything into this and it sucked.
Damn.
And so we edited the videos, and I was like, these are okay. And so when the marketing came, I basically had everybody sit in the break room, and it was just free. It wasn't, I lost the whole this thing. We went live. I had the phone. I had a phone, and I was just freely letting them roast across the room. And I just knew everybody's name, so I would go to and that's how I marketed the first season. So they hadn't seen the first season yet. They saw this free, authentic roasting game that felt like you were in the class with your homies, right?
Right.
And then I marketed. People were like, "This is about to be the best shit ever, best shit ever." We aired the first episode. Niggas is. Niggas was like, okay, this is kind of funny,
right?
Because I stacked it so that the funniest episodes were episodes 1 through 4, and then it just got to the point where people were like, I liked how we marketed it. So, all right, bet. Season 2 was all live, with me with a phone. Then season 3, we got camcorders, and we were, doing it like that. And at the time, I was jumping in in content more because I had been building my own audience since the King Kieran Simone thing that I was talking about. And I started jumping in my own shows because we needed people. Like the first episodes of Great Taste, the first 4 had producers in there that never came back because they weren't talent, you know? I was just on the fence, me and Denzel. So we would be doing stuff like that and getting popular on Great Taste. So I was heavily requested on Roast Me, but I didn't want to do Roast Me. I was just like, I'm not talent, you know? But Meg, it wasn't until Meg came on board for season 3 where she forced me off the camera. We got camera, and then I built the classroom. And that's when everything sort of from season 1 and 2 and the marketing came to like just like the perfect, like that was like the perfect storm for what it was.
Yeah, man. You know, Brandon Lewis is my homeboy. Phenomenal comedian. I told him soon as I saw like the first episode, I don't know which episode I seen first. It was definitely already in the classroom. I hit him up and I said, this is the funniest fucking show online right now. I said, bro, and I'm tough. I'm a tough critic, bro. You know what I'm saying? I've been doing stand-up comedy for 13 years. I done did shows with some of the greats. I am a tough comedic critic. And when I said, this is the funniest show online, period. And I meant it. I still mean it. That show is phenomenal. What made you hire, or who hired Brandon Lewis? How did he even get that job as the host of that show?
First of all, huge shout out to Brandon Lewis. He probably has one of the greatest character arcs on All Def channel history, because it's funny. I met him as a complete wreck of a producer. I was brand new. I was nervous about everything. I had my first big production where it was Black people go ice skating for the first time. So I got to rent out an ice rink. Like, we bought it out. It was just ours. You know, spent all this money. We had Teddy Ray, some dude, and B-Lou. It's my first time working with B-Lou. Day of, he calls me. I got an audition, can't make it. I was like, yo, what the hell? So nothing against B-Lou because I didn't know him at the time, but as a producer, I was freaking out. So we literally banned B-Lou. Like, it was like he was like the first person we blacklisted. But then, like, he's hilarious. So when people are that funny, like, it finds a way. You know, nobody
he won his episode of Yo Mama, the MTV show.
He's hilarious. So it's like, we weren't sitting there like, fuck Brandon Lewis, but in terms of like, as a producer, when we were casting, it's like names come with reps. So it's just like, he was like that dude who didn't show up, right? You know, everybody kind of had like a profile when it came to casting, right? So it's crazy because eventually he was just integrated back into things because he's funny. But the reason why he's hosting, he was always a strong roaster because he was always just like a contestant, right? Teddy quit live on air. I was weird about
Teddy was the first host, wasn't he?
Teddy was the first host, and he was a pretty good host, but he didn't really he liked roasting Doughboy. You know, that was something I didn't really understand. He wasn't a roaster. Like, at the time when I was making a Roast Me show, I wasn't thinking of like, when I direct now, I think of it as like being a quarterback. Like, everybody like has a different position, you know, as opposed to thinking that everybody can do the same thing. So I was just like, Teddy, you're good at roasting, roast. And he was just like, I'd be roasting Doughboy because we cool. I didn't understand like the intricacies of it. So he was kind of not into it. You know, he said it was like it was just kind of like stale, the same thing every week. He had his own reasons, right? But I say all that to say.
So hold on, before you get to that, how did he quit live? Was it a joke that hurt him, or he was just like, this is stupid, and then he just walked off?
He said, and you know, like I said, I don't really be putting behind the scene business.
I feel you.
But at the same time, this happened on camera, you know, and I was like very, very affected by that. You know, that was not a cool thing for me. You know, he basically, we were live and he was just like, I'm not doing this no more, and walked off. That's how it happened. Damn. So in my mind, I felt some type of way because I was such a huge fan of Teddy, you know. And I remember the first time I saw him do stand up, I was like, I want to make a show for this guy. I want to do something with this guy, you know.
Incredible
And
stand up.
yeah, and you know, as soon as I got the opportunity for the show, I pulled him aside and I gave it to him. So for it to end like that was just very, it was very real for me, and I definitely, it definitely changed how I work with talent, you know. But yeah, that happened, and I was just kind of like, all right, I gotta the show needs to shift. It has to shift because me, I'm not the nigga to convince somebody to come back,
Straight up.
especially, you know what I mean, especially if I feel offended. So I pivot, and I felt like I needed somebody who had three things. Not only could have a good hosting presence, and because that's a skill. There's a lot of funny people who can't host. A big hosting personality, but also can roast themselves, and that's hard to do too, because a lot of times when you're very chiseled and focused on hosting, teleprompter, when the roasting comes, it's just like what part of the script is this, you know? So you needed those two things, which was tough enough, but I also needed that third thing, which was a very iconic laugh. And that was a big get, because Teddy's laugh is top tier. You know, we want him at every comedy show.
Right.
So B-Lou's laugh mixed with how big of a personality he was on stage and on Roast Me, and the fact that he was one of the strongest roasters, it made sense. But we also, you know, a lot of people remember there was like a cool month where every week was a different host, right? And there was a couple, it was between him and Tahir. Tahir was a really good Roast Me host, but he was involved with All Def in other ways. So it was like a way to mix it up, but also keep it so that the people who were on the drop and, you know, the Kevs and all that stuff weren't like attached to the show, and you know what I mean? So
Right.
it almost made Roast Me its own entity, which is dope, because a lot of people know about Roast Me but don't know about All Def, which is cool. It outgrew, same with Dad Jokes, you know, it kind of outgrew the channel. So yeah, that was kind of like the birth of B-Lou as the host, and that's really when the show found itself too, because it's like B-Lou's connection to these comedians, and the fact that these comedians actually are out there roasting each other. It's not like they just like, all right, roast me, it's time to do this. Like, they're actually out there roasting with people. So
Right.
it's like it's a really fun experience, because those guys, all that whole group of guys is just like a ball of talent, and anytime you're around them, it's a good time. So it's really easy for me. All I do is just shoot them.
Yeah, I told B. Lewis, I said I would never be on that show because I'm a Cancer and I'm sensitive, and I'd be done punch somebody in the eye at the end of that goddamn show. I can't take it. I wouldn't be able to take it. But for me to watch it, I think it's the fucking funniest show. How do you go about casting the comedians that you use for a show like Roast Me and some of this? Because I'm sure there's a lot of comedians that would love to be on the show, but how would you go about casting that, or how do you go about casting that?
That's been for sure a journey. The first season of Roast Me, it was funny because I cast it like how you would cast a like a movie. It was really weird. Like, I'd have them all five, you know, sit in. I'd be like, you two come in. They'd roast. Like, all right, you know what I mean? It was
Nice.
It was very, and you know where I put the ad up? I put the ad up on LA Casting. These were actors, and this is when I really learned the business. I learned that actors get the booking and just go, and then they literally will show up and be like, "What's this for?" And it's like, fam, how unprofessional is that? You didn't even know what this was.
Right.
So now you have these actors who either weren't prepared and they're just sitting there like, I can't roast, you know, or you have these people from LA Casting who are like, yeah, roasting, that sounds like a good thing. And then they're just trying it out for the first time. Right. So it wasn't until I was like, okay, that's not how I can only find roasters through word of mouth, you know, people who have roasted with other people. So that's why it's really important for producers to be in there with talent. Like a lot of times producers just in their office, they hit, you know what I mean? And they just pick people who they think would be good for a project and just, they're surprised when they yell action. You know, it's like, if you are friends with these people or you're going to these clubs and talking to these people and really like in the mix with them, your work is going to be better because you know exactly. So it wasn't until I was like meeting these people and knowing who was and actually asking them, you know, like that's big for me. Like I'll ask B-Lou and Craig, like, who do you want on the show? You know,
Right.
and that's better than just me having like, all right, here's the waiting room, roast them, you know? So
man, Craig Smith, man, that's somebody that I came up with in the comedy scene doing open mics. And you know, he would do these characters and stuff like that, you know. But it wasn't until I saw him on Roast Me that I was like, oh shit, that's your true fucking gift. Like, who knew? I had no clue he was a roaster because it's so off the wall. It's so, the things, it's genius, you know? And I'm like, how did he come up with this weird insult?
Eat gummy bear salsa? Like, the pieces of that joke, I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like I could try to figure out how some people like, oh, I could see how he thought of that. But like, there's some of these things that it's just like, I got nothing.